Our next speaker is Arch Priestess Deena Butta, Fellowship of Isis.
Hi, everybody. I'm just going to start by passing around some business cards in case anything I say is confusing or you want to double check something with me later. You can track me down then. So I was asked to talk about oracles in the tradition of the Fellowship of Isis. Now, it's important for you to know the Fellowship of Isis is not a tradition. It is a fellowship, which means that people of all different traditions can travel together or work on things together and have a lot of things in common. So no one is asking anyone to give anything up and to be involved with the Fellowship of Isis. It's, as Olivia says, the goddess always adds, and she does not subtract. So, okay, thanks. So, cards are up here if you want. So, the more I think about oracles, kind of the more confused I get about the whole subject. Because I think, this is not, I'm not going to touch on anything academic pertaining to the oracles throughout history. Oh, what is this, like a shortcut from there?
I don't know. I think the siren we heard must have been something.
And there was a high-speed pursuit right out
that's
here.
what that was. Oh,
Yeah.
When our doors were open, please
Yes.
help yourself.
Something like that, yes.
Okay.
I think you can edit that out.
Yes. Y'all edit that out.
So I didn't really go into a study. There are some very interesting books about the history of the oracle. Unfortunately, I did not really do any research into that. I think this may be talk maybe a little on the brief side. So there is a book I've been looking at recently that I think has a lot of good stuff in it about priestesses and oracles. It's put on by a company, and unfortunately it's not, I just remembered it today and I did not put it on any of my resource sheets. The company is Avalonia, like Avalon. Avalonia.com is the publisher or the press. So if you go to your search engine and look for Avalonia book publishers and go to their website and look for books about priestesses and oracles, I think that's a collection of essays that's very good on this. Talks about the oracle and the priestess through history. And it seems to me that, yeah, you know, in my public functioning as a reference librarian, people think oracle, like, you know, they think I'm going to reach behind myself and get the magic book that has the answer to their question, whether they have formulated it correctly or not. And I spend a lot of time feeling like I'm really doing lookups in the Akashic records for people, finding the impossible and saying, sir, the answer to your question does not exist in the form in which you are anticipating it. You know, so oracles have throughout history been somewhat political and very easily manipulated. So there's a lot of baggage with this. People think that when they're consulting an oracle, they're going to get a definitive answer, and nothing in this life is definitive. This blue sheet has on the front of it the manifesto of the Fellowship of Isis, which kind of tells you the main nuggets that the Fellowship believes in. And I don't know, do you all know anything about the Fellowship of Isis, or is this brand new to you? Brand new. Okay, so it's been around since 1976. Now, Lady Olivia Robertson has a spiritual history long before then. She was born in 1917, and by the time the 30s had come along, she was working, you know, well towards spiritualism. I think in more later days, she got involved with the Druids, Philip Carr-Gum, and some of the other Druids, especially the Order of Bars, Ovates, and Druids. That's where she derived a lot of her vocabulary that she uses. I wouldn't say she is a Druid, but she certainly is has spent some time. And spent some time in spiritualism, and her background is Church of Ireland, which is essentially Church of England. Her brother, with whom she founded the fellowship, was a rector in the Church of Ireland. Let me pass these around, because these things, if you read on the back, if anyone joined the Fellowship of Isis, that's how you do it. But on the front is essentially joining the Fellowship of Isis is basically agreeing to these things, and that's it. Nobody ever has to go any further than that. There's not a lot of bonds or obligations or anything like that. So this kind of tells you what the Fellowship of Isis is about. It was founded formally in 1976 following a series of revelations that Olivia and her brother had about the nature of God. She's very fond of saying Isis is God in female form, which is how she answers her neighbors when they're saying, oh, what is this Isis God? That is her response to that. And one day her brother Lawrence realized very clearly and directly that God was female. And he felt he could really no longer be a rector under those conditions. So they kind of devoted themselves to founding the fellowship, and they thought it would just start out with just a group of the half dozen of their closest friends with whom they talked about these things all the time. And they were astonished when it grew to the size it is. Now, we kind of, since the decentralization of the fellowship, which occurred around 2000, and that's when 32 of us, mystical 33rd, were appointed to be Arch Priestesses to help Olivia. She didn't like the idea that everything was devolving upon her. And I think it still actually does, because people still look up to her, even though she doesn't necessarily want that anymore. That is kind of when you stopped seeing copies of Isian News with centrally kept statistics in them. Isian News was the newsletter that Olivia and her brother started back in 1976 as a way of keeping in touch with people who were interested in the Fellowship of Isis. And each issue of Isian News started out with a list of something about her temple at Clonical Castle, where she could be contacted. And then it grew. Like within the first year, there were people wanting to open sister centers, as they were called back then. So they got a sister center in, I think maybe London or somewhere in England, or maybe another part of Ireland. I don't remember who the first sister center was. Pretty soon there was another one, and it hopped over the pond, and pretty soon there was another one in California, and another one in Texas, and New York, and then Germany, and just it kind of spread all over the world. Now there are, they've stopped calling them sister centers. They started, as this thought has evolved, in the 80s, I believe, maybe toward the late 80s, they began calling them Isians, the Temple of Isis. And this is Isis in the broad sense, not necessarily the, strictly speaking, Egyptian Isis, but the Hellenic Isis, because her name, the Egyptian name is Aset. And the way the Greeks heard that, because of course they were the main cultural power, like there was no more Egyptian government. So they, after Alexander the Great, the way they heard that and the way they could put it into their alphabet, Isis is more like what they heard, and Isis is kind of the anglicized way of looking at ISIS, but it was more Aset, Iset, and Isis is what the Greeks heard with their ears, and they tried to write it down, and to us it looks like Isis, and everyone says that, which is fine, because she knows who we're talking to. But she turned out to be carried by them, because they were all, their civilizations all over the world, so they carried her knowledge of her to every corner, and the empire went to Afghanistan, so there are temples of Isis maybe not existing anymore, but there were everywhere. Everywhere there was in Alexandria there was also a knowledge of Isis, and so it's like knowledge of her. Everyone said, "Oh yeah, we know her. We know Isis. We have a goddess. We actually call her Boadika, but we know her. She's the one that goes to battle for her children." And oh yeah, we know her. Her name is Kuan Yin. She is compassionate to the ultimate degree possible. But we know her. You call her Isis, we call her Kuan Yin. So everyone, everywhere, felt they could recognize her out of all the different gods and goddesses that the Romans and the Greeks carried to throughout the then civilized world. They felt they all connected to her, and that was why she was chosen as the patroness of the Fellowship of Isis. It's not an Egyptian religion or an Egyptian group. There are Egyptian groups, and if you want to know, we'll be glad to tell you about them, but this is more in the spirit of Egypt, which was not something that was so authoritarian from the top down, but like Egypt was a long country that was on about this much on either side of the River Nile, which, 4,000, I forget how many thousand miles long. So that all of its length, there are variations. This religion keeps transmogifying. And so it's really the spirit of this, not where there's one ultimate truth and everything is from the top down. There are variations on your perspective on the truth, your experience of the truth, and you may call deity by a different name in your nome or your neighborhood of Egypt, and you may call it by a different name. You may have a different sacred trinity. A lot of them had a sacred trinity, but they were all different names associated with that. So it's the spirit of that, and the spirit of the fact that every deity had a male and a female version of its name. There are things ending in T, for the most part, are like the feminine. So there was like the Nun, the creative beginning, Nun, and the Nunet. It's like the mother and father foundational matrix of all things. It's not just, you don't go to battle over if this is male or female. I mean, it's got two sides of it. So that's kind of just a general survey of the kinds of openness that and the all-embracing nature of the Fellowship of Isis. Now, I want to run out of time before I get to part 2 of the oracles. Okay, so why was it founded? See the manifesto for that, which I passed around. It was founded because of the very first line, which says that growing numbers of people are rediscovering their love for the goddess. Yes! So they said, we need to do something in response to this, what you call the call of Isis, these people feeling this longing. They felt that there were gods, there were patriarchal gods that had kind of been running things for so long in these many civilizations. And they felt, Olivia and her brother and his wife felt that they really needed to kind of respond to that and make people aware that in their own tradition, whatever they were, whether they were Buddhist monks or they were Catholics or they were Mormons or whatever they were, Wiccans or you name it, whatever your spiritual tradition is, there is a female side to that. And it may surprise a lot of people that they think their religion is like, as a God, God the Father. We all have a father and a mother. Okay, so a lot of their purpose was to help people look at their own tradition and discover where's the feminine divine within that tradition. And to help them work with it. And now Olivia, from the very beginning, started writing rituals and liturgies, actually, that could be a liturgy which was written down, honoring a specific deity and whatever that deity was there to promote among humanity. to bring forth. And the way and they could be done as a ritual, where you could actually act them out, celebrate them, invoke deity. All of these are either to a goddess or to a goddess and a god. But they are all focused primarily first on the feminine divine. You invoke your deity. This is followed by an utterance, a communication from the deity to you, which she calls an oracle. In real life, how do these oracles come about? Well, this oracular thing is built into the structure of every liturgy Olivia has ever written. And, okay, time for my next handout. In case you're curious to know which deities they are too, I'm going to pass this around. This is a list of two sides of this are all the little booklets into which Olivia's rituals, which she began writing in 1976, and they started out as very from the center. You are at the center. You and your shrine. You and your spiritual home that you create for deity is and right in your heart. And the Egyptians believe that too, that you are a temple. And the temples were designed to look like kind of a vaguely familiar layout of the human body. Because your heart is where you confront deity directly, where you meet deity and you commune with deity. So the daily communion with deity was an integral part of spiritual practice in the Fellowship of Isis. So you can see that now these, I don't have them in chronological order. I've got them sort of in alphabetical order. But the very first booklet was actually Dea, which is like the second one on the list. And it was, I think it was actually sooner than 1980, but I think that's the edition I have was the 1980 edition. And it starts out with your dedication of your shrine. In other words, like dedicating your heart, and your shrine being an external representation of what is in your heart, and that meeting place where you invite deity into your life. And then it goes outward from there. There's the next one she wrote was a morning rite, and then an evening rite. So that from the first bursting upon the scene, bursting into the world of a physical shrine to honor deity, it then went into morning and evening. You can see the spiral kind of starting, because after that, it went on to seasonal, spring, summer, autumn, winter rituals, very brief ones, very personal ones that she wrote the first year. And then it went on into mysteries, which she called mysteries, that could be celebrated at the different seasons. And in that first booklet, that first compilation of her liturgies, there were things pertaining to the labyrinth, the Eleusinian mysteries, the mysteries of Le Comte de Saint-Germain, and I can't remember what, there's a couple others for the summer celebrations. These, as you can see, they're global. These rituals are not all Egyptian. Some of them are Greek. If you just look at the names of the deities, there are Japanese names, Indian names, Irish names, Grania, Donna, Hathor, Rhea, Roman, Etruscan, and there's Native Americans. There are New Zealand, that part of the world, deities from that part, Africa. She tries to include, she really globally explores all these spiritual traditions. Now the rituals that she has composed reflect a structure that what Olivia herself is striving for and shares with people. They start out with the invocation, followed by the oracle. So you reach upward to deity, deity reaches down to you. It's followed by a celebration of some kind, in which still other deities, depending on the season, depending on the reason, other deities are also invited to participate in this topic or whatever it is that the ritual is about. You'll see a lot of interesting I think Dia was the most basic one. There's another, the second one I think was actually Urania, or maybe it was Sophia. One is based on, so Sophia is based, is the cosmic consciousness of the goddess based on the 12 signs of the zodiac and deities associated with those signs. So that, I think what she, let's see, Urania was, the planet. So I think, okay, so Urania might have come next because she was working through the earth. Dea is all about the earth and the daily and seasonal cycles of the earth on which we live, followed by Urania, which is ceremonial, very ceremonial magic is the orientation of this. And it works through the planets and the deities. It goes beyond the orbit of the earth into space, time, the moon, the sun, and the other planets in the solar system. And then the next one, Sophia, goes beyond the solar system into a yet bigger spiral. It goes spiraling outward and outward and outward. And there's a series called Psyche, which is dedicated to different star systems, way beyond our galaxy. So this is fascinating structure that she has put together over the years. And let me bring us back now to whatever it was. Oh, well, the Fellowship of Isis is about the direct experience of the feminine divine in all of its global manifestations. The oracle is one way of experiencing the feminine divine directly. They encourage people, members of the Fellowship of Isis are encouraged to commune daily with deity at sunrise and sunset. That's when Olivia communes with deity, at sunrise, sunset. So then, if we all kind of join in at sunrise and sunset, or whenever it's convenient for us, you will be connecting spiritually to someone else. We try to also, in the communion, try to connect back with the castle, where the main temple of the Fellowship of Isis is. And the structure, yes, you call upon deity in these seasonal rituals, and deity then has something to say to you. You listen, and deity speaks, and then you basically hear. Now, how does she come to write these things? How does she come to write these things? She prepares herself for this. She immerses herself in that season. Now, remember I said her background is she has a background in spiritualism, so that she already was kind of predisposed. And I think all people who come from the British Isles, I think they're all predisposed. I think it's a genetic thing. Because all the old English ladies that I have known all saw stuff. They all heard stuff. They turn around and like, oh my God, there's my dead nephew, and that kind of thing. And that I think they're predisposed genetically to this. She has always said, you do not channel the deity in the sense that you are letting them take you over. She says you must never do this. This is the belief to which Olivia happens to subscribe. She likes to remain in a light trance so that she is somewhat conscious, and there's no guarantee she's going to remember what it was she said when she comes out of this light trance. But that is what she says. So she prepares herself for this over a period of days. She eats very little. She drinks. They have a sacred well. This being a castle, you've got to have your supply of water. Otherwise, what good is your castle? So that if you get barricaded in that, you're going to be able to last a long time. So there is a spring right in the walls of the castle where she lives, and that water is sacred to Bridget, and it's has a lot of healing properties. So she starts communing more with that well, and on the day that she has targeted as the day that she's going to compose the next liturgy, she gets up really early, sits by the well, and has a drink of the sacred water, and then whatever comes to her, she basically writes down. So that's what you have here is the list of what has come to her over the years. And if you want to see what an actual one of these is like, I am going to pass along my next. This pink page has on it, on the front, it has from the, well, since the days that the fellowship kind of went online, there are a bunch of different email lists, and one of them is the Fellowship of Isis Oracles at yahoogroups.com, which you can join, subscribe to, and in your email you will once a month get one of the oracles that is part of one of these rituals. So the oracle of the month of September 2009 is the oracle of the goddess Venus, which comes from the booklet Melusina, The Life Centers of the Goddess by Olivia. So there is an invocation of divine Venus, goddess of love, a goddess of love who are adored as Ishtar of Babylon, Hathor of Egypt, and Lakshmi of India. Their power is felt throughout the earth. Yet too long have we turned from thee, giving our praise rather to gods of power, law, and intellect. Return to us before it is too late and our earth is polluted by greed, fear, and hatred. So I think her calling upon the deity is based on some issue or some need that is strongly felt at that moment. And the way it works out then the deity speaks to Olivia. And this one starts out as saying, "My daughter, you do well to invoke me. Man is a lonely being, surrounded by the creations of his own mind. Yet this very intellect has severed his communion with the deities." And it goes on from there for the rest of the page. So that this is a very nice thing. And now on the other side, I happen to remember, because I have been the editor for I forget how many years now of Isian Shop, which I have for sale for $5 a piece if anyone's interested. But one of the issues of Isis Shop, someone submitted an oracle to me from Lady Olivia. Deborah Merwin, who's a priestess and a Hawaii priestess in Florida, was present in 1993 in Chicago when the Parliament of the World's Religions took place. And Deborah wrote to me and said, a week before Katrina moved through our area, I came across a forgotten homemade video of Lady Olivia giving a spontaneous oracle to a group of FOI priesthood gathered in the hospitality suite of the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago in 1993. That was 12 years ago. Well, she said this a few years ago. Considering the recent events happening worldwide, I thought you might find her words interesting and want us, because of course, all of us who sat there, it was an oracle. Of course we didn't remember it. It's just, for some reason, that is the nature of the oracle. There's something about it that is very much of that moment. It is in some ways a synchronous thing. Even if it has been tampered with, it will probably be tampered with synchronistically somehow. But what she said, and Deborah fortunately had her camera running, and it said, and Olivia just kind of went within and allowed the goddess to descend upon her. And she doesn't always know which goddess it is. Sometimes she can put a name to it, and other times she can't. And she says, the goddess said, through Olivia, said, I have called you all. There is no one here by accident. I have known each one of you. You are dear to my heart. I say to you, banish all your old ideas. We of the cosmic hierarchy of the stars are now manifesting directly all your old information of Atlantis. That which you have received from your teachers no longer works. Your key to that is twisted. You need a new key. You must transform yourselves through my son, Horus, the child to my daughter, Hathor, young. The age of the sun is passing to the age of the stars. Concentrate upon Sirius. All of you are drawn by this.
we are coming to you from outer and inner space. You are all our children. A special vocation has drawn you to this spot now, so I could speak to you and tell you to have courage. You must do what you must do to usher in this new eon, and there will be disturbances on the earth. Do not be afraid. I am telling you now, they will happen. They are for the best. Earth needs cleansing.
Keep in mind, this is 1993.
When earth changes begin, have courage. It is for the best. You are not rejected by the Divine Mother. All of you here have had dreams, have had premonitions. These are good. That which comes is marvelous. Lift up your hearts. The goddess, the god, Isis Osiris, is reborn within each one of you.
And this was just, when Deborah sent this to me, I was just in tears. It was so good to hear that again. And this was the spontaneous as opposed to the written oracle, so that you have one on each side of this. I'm going to press this around. And then you can take that home and look at it and read it every now and then. Because like we only have the vaguest memories of whatever she said, and she didn't remember hardly any of it. And we were all like way up there. We were all in a light trance. And of course, you don't always remember everything under those conditions. So it was a gift from Isis that Deborah happened to have this material and was able to share it. So that is just a blessing. There's a book called The Call of Isis. If you want to know more about Olivia, I kind of went through my copy of Call of Isis, which is falling apart. And there are things in there that could be considered reference to her development. It talks of, this is her spiritual biography, Call of Isis. And when you read that book, it goes over early experiences she had that all became part of, were channeled into the Fellowship of Isis, the way it developed. So you can see as her background and life experience, you can see how it impacted, how it affected the way the FOI has manifested. So it's a fascinating book to read. Now, I could be wrong, I may have missed it, but I'm not sure the word oracle is used in that book anywhere, which is not to say that oracular things are not constantly studied or discussed, because every chapter is about a different level of approaching the inner understanding of what the oracle is about. So I urge all of you to read that book. The liturgies are a way of, each liturgy is a way of personal initiation, development, awakening, and evolution. And we kind of describe this spiral, this ever-widening spiral, which the booklets called the series of them come forth from Olivia in this ever-widening spiral. And the Fellowship of Isis does not work with circles necessarily. They work with spirals, which are like an open-ended, multi-level kind of thing that penetrates different existences, different levels of reality, different universes. So it is kind of a labyrinthine thing that includes the whole universe every time you do a ritual. So that's kind of the spiral of Isis. There's an 8-pointed star, the star of Ishtar, and then this glyph of Tiamat, the cosmic dragon, is kind of informing this and spiraling within it. So that talks about a lot about, if you study that symbol of the, I forgot to put that in here, but that glyph of the Fellowship of Isis is it's a good thing to contemplate. The liturgies are a way of personal initiation. They were composed as like a forum, kind of, among all the different global religions. They would meet in a structure developed by Olivia. The structure of these rituals was developed by her, where it starts out with an invocation, followed by an oracle, followed by other stuff, other interactions that happen. Some of them include a little mystery. They are not of religious, of any one specific religion. They are unique to you, Olivia. They are unique to the Fellowship of Isis, but they are intended for everyone, regardless of their background, regardless of their tradition, to find maybe their special deity. There may have been a special invocation to her, or her and her partner.
in this series of rituals. Olivia intended them to be a common ground that is kind of common to all religions, where people of different religions could meet each other in those liturgies that she composed. Now, I'm not sure how people of other religions like this or even know that it exists, but it's there. There are deities she calls upon that are Zoroastrian deities or whatever the religion was that preceded that Zoroastrianism. Whatever came before that, there's deities called upon that from the Middle East. I don't know if those people are necessarily into doing Olivia's rituals, but they could if they wanted to. They might find it enlightening because when you go into a ritual, it's not just for that one deity. There's a bunch of others from all pantheons that come forward to meet Anahita, for example. They come forward to meet Anahita and to interact with her, and maybe their mission globally is like a global communion of goddesses and gods to work on whatever this issue is. The oracle is an integral part of every liturgy, and so we talked about how she composed the rituals and the oracles. There was a note from her that I just seemed pertinent at the time, so here it is. When working with the rituals in Nuit of the Milky Way, which began kind of a series of alchemical rituals, a priestess, priest alchemist has the following choices. They may use the rites presented in the book or create their own. So she really sees these rituals as a starting point, like a foundation, to evoke stuff from within you. So you don't necessarily have to just be very punctilious about performing these the way they are composed. Now, at the Goddess Festival, that is what we do. We take them as they're written, and we've been very faithful to them because they express the moment in which they were written down. When you're working with them personally, at home in your own temple, you don't have to be so, about it. So Olivia does this written down oracle for people worldwide who she may never physically interact with, but it's like a spiritual home to be able to tune in to the Temple of Isis and Quantum Castle. She also is an oracle in the sense that she delivers these spontaneous oracles. She will allow the deity to come over her, maintaining her integrity as a person, and let the deity, it's not exactly like Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost, where it's like, don't you ever do that to me again, like take on my body and use it. And this is more like she kind of has her freedom while she's in that situation, that she's in a light trance. She doesn't do strange things while she's not being possessed or anything like that. She maintains her freedom while she's in this situation. And it's fascinating to see her deliver an oracle. I've seen other people deliver the oracles. I remember Seshmi when he was developing into a priest of Isis, and he began complaining. Well, he had come from a religious tradition where he didn't have opportunities to be musically creative the way he wanted, and they were concerned this was too much, involving his ego too much. And at the same time, he felt this spirit within wanted him to create and to sing and to compose music. And so he was asking us for a healing, and when we were going over his body, we could see that the throat chakra came out to here. It was just so active. It was so pregnant, so dying to pop open and start delivering. And so just very shortly after that, we helped him. We tried to remove the negativity from whatever that was. We didn't know if he was coming down with his throat. We had no idea what that meant at the time. But within a couple of weeks after that, he delivered his first spontaneous oracle, and he was shaking like this because he didn't know what was happening to him. And it was at the Parliament where there was this amazing, we were immersed in just this very powerful energy from all these spiritual people from all over the world for a period like 10 days or 12 days or something. And so he was flooded with spirit, and
there had been some drumming and whatever, and he said, I think I'm about to deliver an oracle of Thoth. And he delivered this beautiful message. I don't remember it either, but when Luke would deliver an oracle, it was beautiful. He didn't really, he was an articulate person in ordinary life. He composed songs. So he was articulate, he was creative. His throat was obviously a gateway for communication with deity and with spirit. So that it was not surprising that when he delivered an oracle, it was beautiful, it was pertinent to the people who heard it, it was what they needed to hear. Now when you saw it, if we had recorded them on paper, maybe it wouldn't have, maybe it wouldn't have looked like anything. It was the act of hearing it, that coming through your ears, this seems to be a very critical thing. And I think maybe some other, they have to come through, I think, some sense where they impact your being at that moment. And they come flooding through you are the temple of spirit and you. They come flooding through you and they are impacting you like light coming through the rose window in the Notre Dame Cathedral. So I've seen other people where maybe the oracle, as Dan stated this morning, well, some people are better at this than others, and there's no formal training for this in the Fellowship of Isis, because, of course, there is nothing that comes from the top down in the Fellowship of Isis. Everything comes from the bottom up, and it's if you want this, you go out and learn how to do it. And I think there are some people who are good at it that can bring other people along, but there is no, requirement that everyone has to be an oracle. What would that be if we all were, we want diversity in this. So other people in this fellowship have many countless different roles. And some of the people have been chosen by deity to be oracles. And there's other people that, when they deliver an oracle, it is not nearly as impressive. And there was this one person that is known to both of us where deity would move her jaw around. And it was rather disconcerting. It was better not to look. Does she go like this with her mouth? And then the sentences would come out like one line at a time. And it was almost agonizing to listen to this. So you'd have to close your eyes and wait for the next line to come along. And sometimes even when they were written down, they weren't like Olivia's oracles, which really give you something to mobilize you at that moment. And Luke's oracles were like that too. You would be mobilized to do something you needed to do. For good or for ill, or maybe there is no good or ill. That's the nature of the oracle. It's just to get you to do whatever you are supposed to do. At that moment, it's for you. It's a message for you. It may not make sense to anyone else. You are the one that consulted the oracle. You have that. And then when we do these invocations, and even though the priestess is standing there doing she's really standing in for everybody, because everyone is a natural priest and priestess of deity. So you have a person there representing you. But when you are calling up and invoking deity, then this oracle has come down because the goddess knows that you're going to be reading this right when you need to read it or hear it. And so it is there for all time, for everyone, which is a very cool thing, I think.
Thank you very much, Lady
thank
Deena.
you all for listening.
This October, the world of pagan voices comes together in one global gathering, the Pagan World Congress. 5 days, over 100 hours, speakers, rituals, music, and town halls streamed across the world. Join the conversation, shape the future, be part of history. The Pagan World Congress, October 9th through 13th, 2025. Online at paganworld.co.